Emily here with little Mickey. I called you for a treat, but you didn't come, so I had to come get you. I was just thinking of a story that somebody had told me about their medical trauma and their medical PTSD. And if it resonated with anybody, it was a friend of mine who was in her mid-30s when she told me this story, but clean bill of health. And the most remarkable thing that happened in her health history was that when she was about 7 years old, she broke her arm. And when it was time to take off the cast, they're constructing the buzz saw to kind of take the cast off. And they start sawing it off, and she yelps and she says, "You're cutting me, you're cutting me." And the doctor at the time, without addressing her directly as a child, turned to mom and said, "I'm not cutting her." And the doctor and mom proceeded to hold down my friend as a little girl to cut the cast off. And when the cast was off, she indeed had a cut down her arm. And so, to add insult to injury, the cast was taken off too soon. And so it had to be put back on, and then she had to have, the cast recut off again, which I'm sure was an anxiety-provoking event for her once again. So flashback to decades and decades later, she's at the dentist office to get her teeth cleaned. And when she's pulled back, to have her in the chair to have her teeth cleaned, she's triggered and she starts sobbing and crying and shaking because there was something about the chair that was very similar to the chair she was in when this cast was cut off and she was cut herself. And that was an instance of medical trauma for her. And from then on, she could only go to the dentist's office with her husband. And so I think this story is very important to note because medical trauma can happen to anybody. It can happen to people who are chronically ill, but also people who are only acutely ill. It's just people with chronic illness are exposed to the healthcare system more often, and they're at an increased risk. Does any part of the story resonate to anybody, whether it's the chair or repeated medical events? Or I think what most resonated with me was my friend as a child not being addressed directly by the physician and being held down by mom, because I was held down a lot as a kid too. But that's my little, thought for today. Thanks. Bye-bye.